Of all the words in the Indian spiritual vocabulary, few are invoked more often or misread more badly than Vairagya, dispassion. It is named as one of the two great means of yoga set beside sustained practice. It is the second of the four qualifications of the Vedantic seeker, and in the Yoga Vasishtha, the awakening of the soul begins with it. The opening book of that vast work bears its very name. And yet popular usage has flattened it into something grim, a turning of the back on life, a clenched suppression of feeling, a cultivated coldness toward people and things. That picture is not merely incomplete. On the classical understanding, it describes a counterfeit, not the thing itself. So let us recover the precise meaning the traditions give to this word and answer the questions a serious practitioner actually asks. What is dispassion and what is its nature? Why does it stand so near the center of the path? Does it require giving up the world? And how does it differ from mere suppression? The whole argument can be compressed into a single sentence. Vairagya is not the suppression of desire, but the dissolution of its compulsive hold. It arises not from disappointment, but from clear seeing, and it is a condition of inner freedom that can be lived as fully in the marketplace as in the cave. Everything that follows is the unfolding of that one sentence. Begin with the word itself, because the Sanskrit reveals the concept with unusual exactness. Vairagya is formed from viraga, vi meaning away from or without, joined to raga. And here is the decisive point. Raga does not first mean passion. It means color or dye, from the root ranj, to be colored, tinged or stained. Passion is called raga because it colors the mind, the way a dye stains cloth. So Vairagya is quite literally a decoloring. It is the draining away of the tint that desire and aversion lay over our perception, so that things may be seen as they are, rather than through the stain of I want this and I do not want that. This already corrects two errors. First, dispassion is not the absence of objects, but the absence of the coloring. The world remains, it simply no longer dyes the one who sees it. And second, this is easy to miss, since craving and its opposite, aversion, are only the same cloth dyed two different ways. True dispassion is freedom from both. A mind full of revulsion is just as colored as a mind full of craving. It has only changed the hue. Disgust at the world is not freedom from the world. A small family of words surrounds this term, and it helps to keep them distinct. Viraga is the state. Vairagya is the quality, the settled disposition. Vitaraga, one whose passion has departed, names the person in whom it is established, the sage. Nirveda is the disenchantment, the world weariness that often comes just before it. Tyaga is relinquishment, the inward letting go of attachment to results. And sannyasa is the formal, outward renunciation of the monk. Much confusion comes from collapsing these together, for one may take sannyasa and have no vairagya at all, and one may have vairagya in fullest measure without ever taking sannyasa. This tells us what dispassion essentially is. A state of mind, not a state of circumstance. It is not measured by what you own, what you wear, what you eat, or where you live, but by the mind's relation to these things. Patanjali's definition is precise. Dispassion, he says, is the consciousness of mastery, vashikara sanya, that belongs to one who has ceased to thirst for objects, whether objects directly experienced or merely promised in Scripture. The accent falls on that single word, thirst. Dispassion is not a thirsty man heroically refusing the water in front of him. It is a man who is simply no longer thirsty. The tradition then maps the state along two lines. The first is the division into lower and higher. The lower dispassion, Apara Vairagya, is the hard-won mastery over craving. It is still an achievement of will and understanding. It is something you do. The higher, Paravairagya, is of another order entirely. A spontaneous thirstlessness, even for the very constituents of nature, that simply dawns when pure consciousness is directly seen. The lower is a climbing. The higher is a kind of falling. One climbs to the lower, one falls into the higher. Within the lower dispassion, the commentators mark 4 ascending stages, and it is a remarkably exact map of real experience. First, yatamana, the striving, the initial effort to hold the senses back from their objects. Then, vyatireka, the discriminating, when you can finally tell which attachments have weakened and which still hold. Honest self-observation becomes possible. Then, ekendriya, when the senses no longer run outward on their own and attachment survives only inwardly, as a faint residual taste in the mind. This subtle stage is harder than the 2 before it, and it is where many lose heart. And at last, vashikara, mastery, the complete loss of any lingering relish, where objects may be fully present and yet exert no pull at all. There is a second line too, intensity. The same tradition speaks of dispassion as mild, moderate, or intense, and holds that only the intense degree ripens into liberating knowledge. This is why the Vivekachudamani warns that where dispassion is feeble, all the other disciplines are like water in a mirage, present to the eye, useless to the thirst. Degree, not mere presence, is what tells. Which brings us to the question on which everything practical turns, and on which most error gathers, because suppression and dispassion are opposites that wear the very same outward face. In suppression, the craving is fully alive. It is simply pinned down by force of will, like a coiled spring held flat by the hand. The moment your attention or your resolve slackens, it leaps back with all its stored energy intact. In genuine dispassion, the craving has lost its charge at the source through understanding. There is no spring to hold down because its tension has already drained away. The first is a war that never ends. The second is the quiet after the war was found to be unnecessary. The Bhagavad Gita draws the line in a verse that every aspirant should commit to memory. Objects fall away from the man who merely abstains, but the taste for them remains, and only when the Supreme is seen does even the taste depart. That residual taste, rasa, the lingering relish, is the entire diagnostic. Forced abstinence leaves the rasa intact, and so is forever unstable. Genuine dispassion is precisely the vanishing of the rasa. The same text puts it bluntly. One who restrains the body while the mind still feeds on the objects of sense is not a yogi at all, but a self-deceiver. Outward control with inward craving is not a lower form of dispassion. It is its imitation. The tradition goes further and names the imitations with real precision. The most useful distinction is between dispassion born of a cause and dispassion born of insight. The first is Karana Vairagya, dispassion produced by a precipitating cause, grief, loss, failure, fear, the shock of a death witnessed. It is genuine while the wound is fresh, and it fades as the wound heals. Its mind, as Swami Shivananda put it, is simply waiting for a chance to get back the things it gave up. The second is VAIRÄGYA Vairagya, dispassion born of discrimination, of having actually seen that no finite thing can yield lasting fulfillment. Because it rests on understanding and not on mood, it does not fade. It is the only kind that carries you to the goal. The false kind travels under three vivid traditional names, each worth knowing. There is Shmashana Vairagya, cremation ground dispassion, the sobering that grips a man at the burning ground. Why do I toil day and night? And it dissolves before he has reached home. There is Markata Vairagya, monkey renunciation, the empty show of one who lives bare in the forest, yet has surrendered not a single appetite. And there is Falgu Vairagya, hollow renunciation, named for the river Falgu, which shows a dry bed on the surface while the water runs on beneath the sand. A renunciation dry to the eye, with desire still flowing underneath. And one corollary belongs here. Because true dispassion grows from clear seeing, the real labor of the seeker is not to crush desire directly, but to see clearly. When the seeing is real, the desire loosens of its own accord, and there is nothing left to suppress. Suppression treats the symptom. Discrimination dissolves the cause. So we have the thing in outline, and we can tell it from its imitations. Vairagya is a decoloring of the mind, freedom from craving and aversion alike. It is a quality of mind, not of circumstance. It ripens through stages, and only in its intense degree does it ripen into knowledge. And it is never suppression, for the test is always whether the taste itself has gone or is merely being held down. But a deep question remains, the one every serious seeker eventually asks. If this is what dispassion is, then must we leave the world to attain it? That is where we begin next.